This episode is sponsored by Pet Matrix Premium Canine Supplements. Straight Up Dog Talk is super excited to be partnered with Pet Matrix. After exhausting several other pet supplemental brands, I am now seeing the results that I have always been searching for Toby and Fitz. Pet Matrix supports all three pillars of canine wellness using their cell matrix delivery. It delivers nutrition directly into the cell. If you're looking for a supplement that pairs with nature and science, look no further and get your dog on Pet Matrix today. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, a new kind of podcast where no topic is off limits. We're bringing in experts and owners to have the conversations we should be having as a dog community. Each week, a new guest will share firsthand experiences, educational resources, or professional guidance to help you learn and grow along with your dog. You won't get one perspective here, you'll get them all, because every dog is different and every owner is too.
You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Straight Up Dog Talk, or by visiting www.straightupdogtalk.com. Tune in from any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk. We're back this week with a sadder topic. Today we're going to be talking about pet grief. Today we're going to be talking about pet loss and the grief that you suffer afterwards. We want to normalize this topic because it's something that every pet owner does experience on a regular basis. We've got Josh here with us today.
Hey there.
And today's guest is Ness. How are you doing, Ness?
I'm good. How about you guys? Thanks so much for having me.
I'm good.
Hey, end of the workday. I'm good too.
Yeah, excited as always. So Ness and I have a little bit of a different background here. Ness and I met through Plantstagram, not through Dogstagram. So
This is true.
we have a little bit of a different relationship as far as how social media works for us. So if you're interested in seeing beautiful plants of all kinds, give Ness a follow. We'll provide her socials on the episode details here so you can check out her plant account. So unfortunately, recently, Ness lost her dog, Rex, and we're going to get to that topic in a minute. But to start out, I would really like for Ness to just kind of tell us about Rex and, where did you get him? What kind of dog he was, just some of his personality quirks. Just let us know what kind of dog he was.
Sure. So I got Rex as a puppy. He was interesting enough, I grew up rescuing dogs, and Rex was actually the only dog that I ever got from a breeder. And he was a purebred boxer. He was kind of this, he was fawn and white, but he was really this beautiful red color. And I picked him out when he was 2 days old from pictures that the breeder had sent me. Originally, I had wanted a brindle female, and I was absolutely set on that. But when the breeder sent me the pictures of the 7 puppies in the litter, I saw him and knew I had to have him. His whole litter was named after characters in Toy Story. So we obviously kept the name Rex. There was Ham, Slinky, Woody, Buzz, couple others. But growing up, I had Dalmatians, and so he was my first boxer. And we got him when he was ready to come home, probably at 9 or 10 weeks. He was a young puppy when we got him. And I was in my early 20s. I'm in, approaching my late 30s now. So he pretty much was there throughout most of my adult life. He was the only dog that I've had on my own as an adult. He was a really, really pretty awesome dog. He was pretty wild, definitely not for the faint of heart. He had a lot of quirks. He was absolutely insane, a lot of energy, as most boxers do. He required a lot of training, and even with all his training, he was one of those dogs where people came in through the door and he just wanted to be up in your business. I would say he was a little bit naughty. He would jump. We had to train our guests not to give him any attention until he settled down. And he was my best friend. He moved everywhere with me. He's been through breakups. He's been through countless moves with me. He went through nursing school with me together. He really did everything. We've evacuated through wildfires together. We did everything together. And it's one of those things. My husband works for the fire department, and having a dog at home, there's a level of comfort that comes with having a dog when you're home. And it's just one of those things that I'm still not really used to, is just not having a dog, and yeah, he would bark at stuff all the time. And, he was just a really, really wonderful dog. We have a really long list of memories together.
Boxers are definitely a more energetic breed for sure. Yeah. They take a lot more time and effort and training than most dogs, but I completely understand where you're coming from. Fitz is the same way. When people come over, he just barks at people. And I have to tell people, don't ring the doorbell, just come in, walk up the stairs, ignore him, and he's going to bark for 5 minutes. And then after that, he's going to be your best friend. So I completely understand that, a little bit of naughty behavior, but sometimes, you kind of just got to let your dog be your dog at the same time.
Yeah.
I can't say I blame them for wanting to be part of the action.
Artemis, my dog, she will get upset at people if they go into the kitchen or into the bathroom. They have to come into the house, go directly to the couch, and say hello to her.
I don't even have to go anywhere. Artemis comes to me. She's just right there in my face, say hello as soon as I'm here. But I think she kind of just expects that because I'm here so much.
Yeah, Bear too.
Yeah.
Every time he comes over, she loses her mind.
She definitely has her people, that's for sure. Dogs are kind of funny.
Yes.
When we talked the other day about Rex, you mentioned some things about him that were just some kind of funny stories. Let's touch on those things, like how he was a picky eater, how he was a food thief. Just give us an idea of what life with Rex was like.
Sure. So I think one of the stories that I was kind of telling you about was for a short stint of time, for a year, we lived in an apartment together. And I would come home on my lunch break. I would come home after work, and he would be there. My apartment was tiny. I could see the entire apartment when I walked in through the front door. But on one particular occasion, I came home and I couldn't find him. And it's not like there was anywhere for him to go. It was an apartment. But one of the most hilarious things about Rex was he could open doors. He literally could open the doorknobs, the kind that are more of like a lever that you would push down on to open. He could open those. He could open them and push them. He could open them and pull back. He could stand on two legs and pull open the door. And when I lived in my apartment, I had to keep my bathroom door closed because he knew how to get into the trash, even though it was under the sink. And as gross as it sounds, he really liked to use tampons and stuff like that. For being a picky eater, he liked that kind of stuff, and I just never really understood it. But I came home and I couldn't find him, and I go to check the bathroom, and the bathroom door's locked. And it's the kind where you take one of the skewers and you can like pop it open, the lock. And I walked in, and he had locked himself in the bathroom. I think the door had probably closed just enough behind him, and he was trying to get out, and he locked himself in. And of course, the trash was everywhere. There was another occasion where he got a little anxious when I was gone, and he chewed up all of those, the blinds that hang over your slider. He chewed up all of those. Luckily, the maintenance guy, I was really nice to him. I always said hi, and he just went ahead and replaced them for free. And then from that point on, I tied them up and put them to where he couldn't have them, and the blinds were always open. That's just how we had to live after that. And he would steal my chapstick always. always steal my chopsticks off the tables. Like they're like the blue chapstick brand. He was obsessed with them. If I turned my back for 5 seconds, he'd be eating my chopstick. So between chapstick and tampons, yeah. And he was one of those dogs. He was like a pogo stick. Like he would jump so high over the fence. So we had a pretty decent sized fence. There was a 6-foot fence with 2 additional feet of lattice, but he could still jump high enough to where if you were walking by, you could see his head just like bouncing up and down over the fence. And I mean, this dog was just all muscle. He was like, had like no fat on his body. And that was probably because he was such a picky eater. He would starve to death if we didn't just leave food out. Like he was a grazer. He would come, take a few pieces of kibble, probably drop a few pieces of kibble on his way. You know, he would snack and run a lot. And he was just a real cool dog.
That's funny that you mentioned that he thieved your chapstick, because last night I was outside and Toby really wanted to come inside, but Fitz was not done playing fetch yet. And I came inside and I had left a gift bag that my sister had brought me on the dining room table, which is something that I don't normally do because Toby is a thieving little bandit. Mm-hmm. And he got his head stuck in the handle of the gift bag and ripped the gift bag open. And you know what he was going after? Chapstick.
I don't know what's in it besides, you know, whatever petroleum jelly that they like so much. But it, you know, he would turn his nose up at treats, like dog treats, and I never understood it. And you know, he definitely was a quirky dog, and we did a lot of stuff together. He loved car rides. He would jump in the shower with me. That was something that he liked to do, and I'm like, well, I guess you're getting a bath right now. And it actually made it pretty easy to keep him clean.
Yeah, my first dog, Oliver, would steal my wife's underwear.
Oh, that's pretty common. That's pretty common. Honestly, the like 2 things that we pull out of small dogs' stomachs are socks and underwear. Some of the scarier things were pantyhose out of a Shih Tzu and ponytail. Yeah.
Oh, and the ponytail
and ponytail holders because they get tangled up.
And they're so small and easy enough to swallow, I can imagine. And they're usually laying around. At least in my house, they are.
Dogs eat crazy things. Like the tampon thing, that's actually pretty common. Baby diapers, plastic bags, toilet paper rolls.
Yep.
Dogs are kind of maniacs. Shoes, yeah. Shoes tend to get more destroyed than actually swallowed, though.
That's true. We did have to bring Rex to the vet once because of the tampon issue, and luckily it made its way out on its own, if you know what I mean.
That's good. It's always better when it comes out on its own and you don't have to do emergency surgery to remove it. That's for sure. Yeah. I think that this is a good time to put this note in for the listeners. This is why, as a vet tech, I 100% always tell people, do not give your dogs rope toys. Mm-hmm. Because ropes shred, they get stuck in the intestines, and they knot the intestines up, and then you're spending thousands of dollars on surgery. Get something that your dog, you know, a Nylabone, the bark boxes with the indestructible toys. If you have a chewer, give them something that's harder to chew up. Don't give them something that they can shred and swallow and mess up their intestines with.
Absolutely. The all of the shreddable toys were not even an option for Rex. He loved to chew on stuff. You know, sometimes it was his dog bed, but what are you gonna do?
Was Rex was he a fetcher? Was he a walker? What was his gig?
No, he was a horrible fetcher. Absolutely horrid. Our cat is a better fetcher than he ever was. I mean, he would go run after the ball and then look at it and then just never bring it back. So I got a lot of exercise out of it. And eventually I just gave up.
Did he like to go on walks?
He did. He loved to go on walks. He loved to go to dog parks. We did have a couple of kind of more scary incidents that happened at a dog park, and we did eventually stop going, where he got his ear kind of banged up by a dog. But for the most part, he loved being out and he loved going for rides. He loved going to the beach. There was one particular beach that we would take him to here in Stone County called Pinnacle Gulch, and you have to hike in, I don't know, maybe a mile each way. But it was completely enclosed beach, super protected, and no one was ever there. And so he would run around like mad, and he would come home absolutely exhausted. And when I was single and needed him to go on walks, I hired a dog walker, and those were usually the only days where he came home and was out like a light. Otherwise, he was always just kind of zooming around.
Shout out to the dog walkers. I used to be a dog walker, and I know how valuable that is, especially now because Fitz is so active that there are days. I took a class recently and I had to hire my dog walker to come over and play with Fitz because he's so hyper. He won't allow me to get anything done. And she would come over and just wear him out for 30 minutes, and then he would pass out for 3 hours till she came back and do it all over again.
I was pretty picky about who I hired as a dog walker for Rex because he was such high energy that I was so incredibly terrified that he would get loose, get hit by a car or something. But I did end up finding a pretty wonderful dog walker, and a lot of the pictures I have of Rex came from her. I would say 50% of those like kind of professional quality photos. Okay, probably more like 90% of the professional quality photos. Because mine were like selfies, whatever cell phone I had at the time, which 13 years ago was not that great. But so many of my photographs that I have of him came from my dog walker. She would send them to me. She also was, who boarded him at her house, and, he would sleep in her bed or he would sleep in her dog's bed. That's usually how it worked out. Eventually they ended up figuring it out and be able to both squeeze into the dog bed, her dog and my dog. And her dog actually kind of looked a little bit like Fitz. But it was one of those things where so many, in fact, including the picture of him on your website for the podcast, came from our dog walker.
And for reference, that picture on the website, when you guys are scrolling through the catalog of dogs, Rex is the boxer with the love bug heart-shaped, like, little ear toggle things, headband thing on his head. It's absolutely darling. When she sent me that photo, I was like, that is the one that's going on the website because it is too cute.
It was obviously around Valentine's Day that he went on that dog walk because all of the dogs were dressed up in either pink or some sort of Valentine's themed attire.
I thought it was one of the just adorable photos. We had another person submit a photo of two of her dogs, and it's got Christmas scenery in the background. Like, I don't care what the background is, as long as your dogs look good for the website. That's all that matters, right?
I used to make Rex pose in front of my Christmas tree and take a picture of him every year. Obviously, this was before I had kids because Rex preceded me having kids. I have two daughters now who are 10 and 6, but I would have him pose in front of the Christmas tree. And, I never did send out Christmas cards, but I probably should have.
When I was pet sitting and dog walking, I sent out professional cards with Toby and I for several years because my business closed like right after I got Fitz. So he was never on any of the professional ones, but
I think we still have one on our fridge.
You probably do.
Yeah, yours and Jence's with her and Chad.
The dog Christmas cards. They're the best, right? Like,
yeah, and like not? Years and years later, they're still on my fridge.
They're collectibles now.
That's right.
Exactly. I think I still have like 5 or 6 of them in a box somewhere, which is really terrible, but true. All right, now we're going to get into the harder part. So you lost Rex in August, is that correct? Or September?
September. So we put him down on September 8th. His birthday was at the end of August. And he had just turned 13.
What led you, other than his age, obviously 13 is pretty good for a boxer, but what led you to the decision that it was time to let Rex go? Because I know that you had a veterinarian come to your house. Right. And do the euthanasia in your home, which is a special thing that we will talk about again here in a minute. But
Yes.
let's talk about how we got to that point.
So kind of going back to, I guess you can call it his misbehavior of him jumping on guests when they came over. As much as it was one of the things that drove me insane, it was one of the things, once it stopped happening, that I knew he was going kind of in a downward spiral. He had some arthritic flares, where we had to take him to the vet. It was pretty scary, actually. A few times we had to take him in and get him fluids and like actual, like pain medications, and then he would go back to normal. But it was one of those things where he was starting to lose energy. He wasn't jumping on people, which was not because of my great training, that's for sure. But he was starting to slow down. I noticed that he was starting to definitely get some pretty severe cataracts. We had biopsied, I don't even know how many lumps and bumps on him. Nothing that was really indicative of cancer, but eventually we stopped biopsying because we knew that in his age, he was probably 11 or 12 at this point when we made the decision that if one came back cancerous, there was not anything that we were going to do except for just keep him comfortable. But towards the end, I mean, I couldn't even give you an estimate of how many bumps of various sorts. Some were like mast cell tumors, some were fatty tumors, some were just like really obnoxious, an annoying skin tags on his ears. One was on his eye. He was kind of, slowly starting to fall apart, but he still had good energy. And so we kind of went about our daily lives, and I kind of noticed that he was starting to lose weight. He was always kind of a picky eater, and he was always kind of on the skinny side. And so when I really started noticing, his hip bones starting to show, and he was definitely deaf by the time we put him down. He could be 3 feet from you, and he could be, yelling, rats, rats, rats. Absolutely nothing. He wouldn't even acknowledge that you were there. And I'm pretty convinced that he was mostly blind by that point. And all those things considered, and he was starting to lose his bowels and not being able to control his bladder. And that wasn't even really the stuff that bothered me. I mean, just get a carpet cleaner. That's we own one. But what did it for me was his legs were starting to give out. I started to see him fall. And it was getting to that point where I really struggled with it because he fell so many times in front of me. And I just wondered, like, when I'm home, is he falling and not being able to get up? There was one time he fell down the stairs where we live on a sloped backyard. So to get down to the backyard, you have to go down, I don't know, maybe 5 steps. And he was starting to fall down those steps. He was starting to fall and take longer to get back up. And there was one day where I didn't think he was getting back up. Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
And I knew it was coming. And the difference was that you could tell he was in pain. He couldn't really like sit down all the way. I'm sure, you probably saw dogs where like when they're in pain and arthritic, they can't even really sit down all the way. They're like not really standing. They're not really sitting. They just seem like they can't get comfortable. And the day that he couldn't get back up, he fell, and I just couldn't deal with the thought of what if he falls and he doesn't get back up and he breaks a hip, and then the end of his life is this traumatic trip to the emergency that it just wasn't something that I wanted for him. But arranging for a vet to come to the house kind of on a scheduled basis was not really easy either. In some ways, I think I was hoping that he would just go on his own, that I would wake up and that he would have passed peacefully in the night, but in pure Rex fashion, that just wasn't going to be how he went out.
I've actually been dreading the same thing. Both of my Yorkies, my first one got up with my wife, went downstairs, got into the kennel, that's kind of his safe area. We just kept the door open. she left for work, and by the time I came downstairs, he had just passed. Which was easier. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure every dog owner has that what if, so I can't imagine what you've been through in making that decision. Do you think, since you are a medical professional, that contributed, kind of to your ability to look at Rex and say, okay, it's time for some hard math?
Yeah. So one of the things I did earlier on in my nursing career was I did a lot of oncology nursing and some end of life care in the hospital. And in more recent times, there a bill called Death with Dignity, where basically it's the equivalent of euthanasia in animals that are at their end of life, but in humans. They recently passed the bill in Oregon, and I believe that it's coming here to California. And it was one of those things where I saw so much suffering at the end of life with those cancer patients, where there was really like no out for them. They just had to wait it out. And we made them comfortable, but there's no equivalent of, some sort of, like hospital, IV, and I'm not, I wasn't going to extend his life just to extend his life. I really struggled with when the right time was. Sorry. You feel in my kind of my heart, I felt if I did it too soon, I was almost like murdering him. And I don't know how to describe it. And I know that wasn't the case, but you go through this internal struggle where you want them to be comfortable. You want them to be in a better place. But then if I waited too long and he fell and he got hurt, then that was going to be the end of life that I didn't want for him. I didn't want to have to hurt him, putting him in the car, taking him to the vet. And I didn't want him to be scared. I wanted him to be at home with me. And I wanted to do it on our back deck because he liked to lay out there in the sun. It didn't quite work out that way because it was cold that day. But it was one of those things where I finally had to ask a friend of mine for the names of 2 veterinarians who would come to the house. And one of them specialized only in end-of-life compassionate care. And he was a retired veterinarian. And, he had this cute little business card that, very, no website. He's just like old, like sweet retired veterinarian. And I dreaded making the phone call, but I knew that with kind of winter coming around the corner, it was one of those things where I bet Rex could have lived maybe another month or 2. But at what cost? It was getting colder. He was just going to be in more pain. And I wasn't willing to put him through any more suffering. And I wanted it to be on good terms when he went. I wanted him to be in a place that he knew, a place that he loved, that he spent the bulk of his years, because we finally settled in this house when our first daughter was 2 years old. I mean, we've lived in this house for 8 years. So he spent the bulk of his life here. I finally decided to make the phone call to the vet that I picked out of the 2 business cards that I was given. And the reason that I picked the vet was because it very clearly on his business card was like end of life care. And it's not one of the things that you can really Google. I tried, trust me, because I'm pretty good at Googling and finding things. And there just really was not, there's just not really that kind of service offered frequently, at least not in our area. And I couldn't find, any resources for it. So I was fortunate that my friend had a personal experience with these particular vets. And the vet, I knew he was good when he had just gotten out of oral surgery. And he texted me back as soon as he got out of oral surgery when he got my voicemail, wanting to know how soon I needed it, and told me, hey, if you think that you need it in 2 days, I could probably be up and running and feeling better in 2 days, which I thought was really sweet, because if I had just had oral surgery, I would probably be like, I'll talk to you never.
Right.
But one of the things that I had to decide was how soon, and I felt myself having to, and this is not by any means anything that the vet did or said to make me feel this way, but I think for my own conscience, I had to explain why I am, in essence, like scheduling the death of my dog, and saying it's not urgent. And it, I guess, wasn't urgent, but it was one of those things where I ultimately decided that that was what needed to happen for me to do, to be my last kind of act of love for him. And so I knew that I wanted to do it on a day where things were calm around the house. We had been having some construction done on our backyard, and our contractor had wanted to come the day that he was getting put down. And I said, absolutely not. There will be no other people here besides me, my husband. And I had offered to my daughters, particularly my older one, my 10-year-old, Vienna, I asked her if she wanted to be there. I was probably her age when I started being present with childhood dogs that we would have to put down for, various reasons. But she was very adamant that she did not want to be there. I don't think, she's a pretty sensitive kid, and I don't think it would have been really great for her psyche. So we opted to do it on a Friday morning, when the kids were in school, kind of mid-morning. And, the vet checked in with me, a few days prior and said, are you absolutely certain that this is, when you want to do it? No pressure if it's not. Like, I will work on your timeline. And, the guy probably talked to me for an hour. Keep in mind, he just had oral surgery. And the guy talked to me for probably an hour the first time I talked to him on the phone. It was one of the most amazing things, because not everyone can you talk to about dogs. Some people are like, well, it's a dog, or, they don't understand that, what a dog that you've had for 13 years has been through everything, has been through me going to college, went through me getting married, moving a million times, having kids. Like, there is really nothing in my adult life that was of really any significance that happened before him. And it was one of those things that I don't think that anyone else besides this particular vet could have really kind of calmed me and made me feel like I was making the right choice, because I wasn't really sure if I was making the right choice. And my husband would ask me, like, are you sure that this is what you want to do? I mean, he was our dog, but he was my dog, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I finally had to tell him, you have to stop asking me that. You cannot keep asking me that, because I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I've made a decision. This is what has to happen.
I want to, first of all, applaud you for, one, making the decision that you made, because that line is a very fine line between giving them a life that is sustainable and comfortable and painful and just unhappy for them. You don't want them to live in that misery. My dog Cajun had a degenerative joint disease. He was going through a lot of the same things, falling downstairs. And, ultimately that's why I ended up losing him. And it is a hard decision to make and to know where that line is. The second thing that I want to applaud you for is for inviting your children to participate, because, like you said, that dog was part of your family. Yeah. Rex was not just a dog. That's a non-owner etiquette thing that I'd like
Absolutely.
To know. You don't ever just say to somebody, it's just a dog. If you don't understand, if you don't have a dog, if you don't have a relationship with a pet, you don't say, it's just a dog, it's just a cat, it's just a bird. Emotional connections are made with our pets. They become our children, our family members. And allowing your daughters to make that decision is something that I think is just really important. As a young child, I was not given that decision when my first dog died when I was 16. I really struggled with that for a long time. I didn't realize it until later in life that that's what I was struggling with, but it hurt me in a way that I couldn't have explained back then. And so giving your daughters the opportunity there was just, that's something that I really, really think was very strong and very brave of you.
Thank you. I mean, it's one of those things too, as a parent, where you never really know if you're doing the right thing. And that's kind of how I felt with that in particular. And just in general, I mean, for all intents and purposes, Rex was my baby. Also, he's like my firstborn. I mean, we did everything together. He slept in my bed. Like, I mean, he was my baby. Always under the covers, like total bed dog. But it was one of those things where when I made the decision, and it was about a week out when we like set the date. But there's nothing like having a countdown to your dog's death. It was one of those things where I would walk downstairs in the morning, because at this point you couldn't even get up the stairs. But it was one of those things that I felt so guilty walking down the stairs and knowing like we're one day closer. And like he didn't know it. And that was one of the things I was really scared of, was knowing when the vet came and that he was probably going to have that one more burst of energy, because this vet was going to be someone new and exciting. And when someone is new and exciting, that is when Rex has the most energy. And I was very thankful for the vet that we talked about that. I said, I just have this feeling that when you get here, he's going to have like a short stint of like puppy-like behavior where he wants to know who you are, wants to know what you're doing here. And I'll never forget, it was 10 a.m. was when it was scheduled, and the vet was really punctual, and I didn't know if I wanted that or didn't want that. I didn't want if I wanted him to be early or late, and I knew, because we live on a dead-end street, I knew that when a car rolled up around 10 a.m. and it wasn't a car I recognized, it wasn't our car, it wasn't our neighbor's car, that was Dr. Brown was the vet's name. And I couldn't even greet him at the door. I had my husband do it, and I was just laying with Rex on the living room floor, literally right. I'm on the living room floor right now, and I think though that Rex knew once he kind of sniffed the vet what was happening, because he kept trying to get away from me, and that was hard. But eventually, we kind of got him to settle in, and like our den. It's like, I don't know, it's like a hodgepodge of my plant room versus like kids' distance learning room, playroom. Like, I don't know what kind of room it is, but it's like your extra room that you have downstairs sometimes. And we could have done it outside, because one of the things that the vet warned me about was that when they pass, that a lot of the time they evacuate their bowels or their bladder. And but at that point, I just was like, I don't care. I want him on my lap. I want him to be as close to me as possible. Like, none of that stuff matters. I mean, I'm a nurse, first of all, so none of that stuff matters to me anyways. But definitely my dog, I wanted to hold him until like the very last moment. And, it had been a long time. I was probably a teenager the last time I was there with a dog, like one of my dogs that we put down. And I kind of forgot the process. Like, they give them, the tranquilizer to like calm them, and then once they're asleep, then they give them, the meds that, ultimately, stop their heart. And he fought the tranquilizer, so he did end up needing a second dose, which was crazy, because it was, he was such a fighter until the end. We were basing the dose, the vet, I'm pretty sure, based the dose on his most recent weight, which he had lost a ton of weight since then. He was just skin and bones by the time that happened, and just gray all over. And, once he was asleep, just like that feeling of, he was so heavy in my lap. Oh, I just won't forget that. Like, his, like, petting his head, and his ears were so soft. And that was one of the things I always loved about it. Like, his ears were so soft. And you have that moment, like, in the midst of it, like, wondering, am I still doing the right thing? But it suddenly, it's kind of a blessing that it was like, it's too late. It has to be done. And the vet was, like, so incredibly patient. He let me have as much time as I needed with him beforehand. And then when he did pass and he was gone and he checked, and he, let me check with his stethoscope too. I mean, I believed him, like, Rex was gone, but he knew I was a nurse, and he was like, "Do you want to listen?" I was like, sure. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to really check a dog part of it. I did it where I saw the vet do it. And it was one of those things where all at once you realize that, like, there's just like a million things in the house that are going to remind you of that. Like they're like 6 feet away from me was his food bowl where we would free feed him because he was like the world's worst eater. Like he wouldn't finish a bowl of dog food to save his life, and his water bowl. And I could see his leash, on the table outside. I just, it was overwhelming. It was right before the vet came to the house, and I was like, freaking mess. I was the biggest mess. Like, if you didn't know me, you would think like a human relative had died, but that's how hard it hits you when they have been with you for that long. Like, I was with me longer than my blood-born, like, human children. One of the things I think I'm the most grateful for that I don't think I mentioned, the vet, he guided me as to, I knew I wanted him cremated. As a kid, we lived on property, and we would bury every dog, cat, rabbit, chinchilla, and goldfish in the yard. It's literally like we would bury the random like rescue field mice that got injured and that they get, and we'd bury them too. And every animal had a rock or a tombstone or something to, and so I feel for those people that bought that property.
Hope you're not planning on putting a deck in.
Don't look out back.
That's right.
Definitely don't look in the flower boxes, guys. But like I said, our backyard is being torn up. I had nowhere to even bury him, and honestly, I don't even think that's legal in like city limits here. I'm pretty sure it's illegal. I mean, not like anyone's gonna know, but I'm pretty sure it's legal within city limits here to like bury a body like of an animal, in your yard. But I knew that I wanted him to be planted under a tree. Not much I knew. And so, a week ahead of time, I called our local vet and had arranged to get his paw prints back and for him to be cremated and returned to me. So that in spring, when our backyard is done being, torn apart by tractors, I'm going to buy a mimosa tree, which is this beautiful, like, orange and pink blooming tree that I've wanted for the longest time, and it's going to be Rex's tree. But that vet coordinated getting Rex to the vet after he was put down. My husband and I did not have to take him, which was one of the things that I am eternally grateful for, because I don't think I could have gotten in a car with his lifeless body. I don't think I could have done it. And I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want my husband to bring him and then be alone at home. And so the vet brought him to the vet's office for him. And it was, quite honestly, it was one of the, if I ever have to do it again, which I'm sure I will, because I've got 5 cats. Thankfully, they're all pretty young. But if I ever have to do it again, I absolutely would have that same, well, I don't know. He's probably going to really be retired pretty soon. He was probably in his 80s, but I would absolutely have a vet come again, because it was, I just think, the most humane way to do it in that situation. I mean, I guess cats are a little bit easier, but I cried and I cried and I cried all day. And then I think my husband and I, he was like, "You got to get out of the house. we got to get out of the house. So we went to this little wine bar like down the street, and it was kind of like on and off crying there. So they, these people at this wine bar probably thought it was insane, but the bartender was like, "Hey, I just had to put my dog down too," and bought me a drink. And so I guess that I didn't feel alone in the sense that it hit me that hard. I know other people go through it. It's just maybe not something that we talk about as often, because I think that there's some judgment as to how long does it take you to get over a dog's death.
I can tell you that this July will be 10 years since I put Cajun down, and it still hurts. It's not something that you ever get over. It's something that you learn to live with.
Yeah. I mean, I still think about my dogs from when I was a teenager. Like, they were so special. And it's one of those things where I don't have photos of those dogs. And even some of the photos of Rex from when he was a puppy have gone missing. And it's torture.
It sounds like you had really great support, though, both from the doctor that came to your house and from your vet. You were talking about getting the paw print, and that is so important for pet owners. You don't want to think about end of life at all, but the reality of owning a dog or a cat or any animal, unless it's a tortoise, is that
well, they'll outlive you if it's
right. That's the point, is that you will probably outlive them. And it's one of those things to discuss with your vet, maybe during the year checkup when they hit 8, 9, 10. When my first dog, Oliver, passed away, my vet was still doing both the like clay paw print thing, but they were also doing an ink, which when my second dog passed 2 years later, they were no longer doing the ink, like paw print. And I didn't know, like I hadn't thought to check. And I actually have the paw print of my first dog tattooed on me, and I have space for the other one. But by that point now, I have to figure out basically a time where I'm going to get poster putty, and I'm going to put it in his imprint, and then I'm going to roll that on ink. It's just one of those things to think about. What will you want to remember them by? You talk about pictures and things like that. And I have pictures of all 3 of my dogs, here or gone, up in my office. But there are things that I wish I had thought about beforehand, and it's the same with people. You always think, oh, I wish I would have done this with that person or whatever, but.
And there is things with people that you have to do ahead of time as well, right? Where you have to pick out a coffin and all those things that nobody wants to do. Mm-hmm. But it's the same with a pet. You have to figure that stuff out ahead of time, or it may not happen. And I knew I absolutely was not going to let it happen where I did not get him back. He is going to be a part of our home forever.
It's exactly. You get to bring that piece of them home. And it's funny that Josh mentioned his tattoo, because I also have Cajun's paw print tattooed on me. I actually already went ahead and got Toby and Fitz's tattooed on me as well. They're on Instagram. If anybody wants to check them out, they are rainbow paw prints. They're on my arm. They say that you're supposed to carry your heart on your sleeve, and so I do. Like you said, it's not something that we talk about a lot, which is why I wanted to have you come on, because grief, it's normal. It is a process. It is something that every pet owner, every person who has, family or friends or children is going to go through. It just hits different when it's that first dog. Because Cajun for me was also the dog I got in my early 20s and made it through, like my mid 30s with me. He went through moving to 3 different states. He went through vet tech school with me. He went through marriage. He went through divorce. There were children, then there were not children. I mean, that's your whole life encapsulated in one living being that when they're gone, they're gone. So I think that it's beautiful that you're getting a tree to plant his ashes in, because now every time when you look out your window, like, it's going to bring those memories back to you. And that's part of the grieving process, is going through that and remembering those things and remembering those funny quirks and remembering that he stole your Chinese food off the dining room table.
And much more.
And much more. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up for this episode, but I really appreciate you coming on here and being so open and so honest about your emotions. I do think that the resources are not out there for the in-home vets. It's just not something that's as practiced. So I think that I'm going to have to do some investigation. If you wouldn't mind sending me the gentleman's information, just so maybe I can reach out to him and see what he recommends for other resources. Because again, this is an area that I would like to provide resources for people in. Obviously, this is going to be a state-to-state thing. And touching back real quick, I think it is illegal in most states to bury your dog in the backyard. So maybe don't do that until they're cremated, because I'm pretty sure there is a fine associated with that.
Yeah,
but
I can imagine.
But yeah, I will do some more research, and maybe we'll have another episode where we can actually talk about what you should do in those end of life care stages. Maybe we can get a veterinarian involved or something, but that's definitely for a future episode to come.
I just checked in Iowa, as long as you own the property that you bury them on, you can bury your dog.
Oh, well, there you go.
So don't go bury them on someone else's property.
Right.
I just want.
In Cedar Rapids, where we live, it is illegal to kiss a complete stranger.
Well, that's really boring.
That's pretty boring. Again, thank you, Ness, so much for coming on and just pouring your heart out about this. I know it hasn't been that long since you lost him, and I'm just really grateful that you were willing to talk about it. And hopefully this episode will help others realize that this is a normal process and there is support out there, especially in this community. And again, as always, if there are any of you out there that are going through this, please feel free to jump in the DMs or email me, hit me up on the website, whatever you want, because I am a retired vet tech. I've been through this so many times with so many people. I've been through it personally. It is not easy, and I never want anybody to feel alone when they're going through this. So join us next week with hopefully a much happier topic. And thank you again, Ness, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
Straight Up Dog Talk was created by Emily Breslin. It is edited, produced, and co-hosted by Josh Wasta under the supervision of Straight Up Dog Talk, LLC, and Emily Breslin. If you're enjoying this podcast, follow or subscribe to be sure you don't miss an episode, and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Looking for more honest and relatable dog content? Check out our sister show, Unpacked, with Jerry Sheriff and Madison Simpson. Thanks for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. See you next week.